I am very excited to have the honor to introduce our keynote speaker, who truly took a path to success that was her own, unique journey, and yet one who can inspire all of us. She's an inspiring Philadelphia leader who has broken through glass ceilings in a predominantly male-led profession. Jami Wintz McKeon is the chair-elect of Morgan, Lewis & Bockius, a law firm, as we know, is based here in Philadelphia, but it's also a global law firm with more than 1,600 attorneys and 3,000 employees around the world. Morgan Lewis has shown a deep commitment to providing free legal service to the community for over 100 years. Think about that. For a century, it has provided free legal service. Just last year, the firm's lawyers contributed over 71,000 hours, which translates into tens of millions of dollars in pro bono representations to a diverse group of organizations, including the Women's Resource Center. Jami is one of those who supports that endeavor. She has been with Morgan Lewis for 32 years, ever since she graduated from kindergarten. You know, we all have to help each other when you've been in the business 30 years or more. In her time at Morgan Lewis, she's had 4 children, 2 when she was an associate and 2 as a partner, all while rising through the professional ranks. As I said, she started out as an associate in the litigation group, became the first woman with children in the Philadelphia office to be elevated to partnership, and this is when her kids were just 6 and 4 years old. So you do the math. She has a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're promoting her to a partner. She could have stopped right there and been an impressive woman, but no, she continued on. She has served multiple terms on the firm's advisory board and compensation committee. She became head of the Philadelphia litigation group, then the head of the litigation group firm-wide. She lived in California for 8 years so that she could oversee the development of the firm's presence on the West Coast. In Jami's career, as I said, she's been very active and supportive in pro bono and in the community, and continues that work even today, where she serves on the board of the Kimmel Center. She's received, as you might expect, countless honors, accolades for being a top lawyer, the best litigator, and she was named as a Woman of Distinction by the Philadelphia Business Journal. Again, she could have stopped right there, but no, she topped even her top accolades. In the fall of 2013, this is big, she was elected to be the chairperson of the entire firm starting October 1st of this year. Yeah. Yeah. But if you were going to applaud for that, you got to applaud for this, because it's the first time in 140 years that a woman has been elected chair. In my world, we like to say, you go, girl. Morgan Lewis is now the largest firm in the world to have a woman chair, and one of only a few in the elite AmLaw 50 to actually be headed by a woman. She does all of this while being a wife and a mother. Her husband, John, heads the Quattrone Center for Justice at Penn Law School and is a lawyer and author, including the book Killing Time, which is a book about one of Morgan Lewis's pro bono cases where they were victorious and it was a huge story. He wrote that book. She's also one of our own. We like to say that. She's a Philly girl. She graduated from Villanova Law School. She worked, as you saw, all through her career in Philadelphia, and she now lives in the Wayne area. Please give a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker who took a great path to career success, Jami Wintz McKeon.
Thanks, everybody. I just said to Lynn, I think I should stop now. She did much better job. I didn't know I did all those things. I'm going to have her introduce me just when I go to work every day. My husband used to say that people would be much happier at work if when the person came in the door, there was music and they said, "And now, enter." Well, I can tell you it's true. Like, this is pretty good. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm so excited to see everybody here. I've seen so many friends as I came in the room, people I've known for many, many years, fabulous women like Lynn Yackel, who themselves have just been such pioneers, as well as women who are just starting in their professions. So it's really exciting to be here. And I first want to congratulate Judge Renee Cardwell-Hughes, my icon, and what a fabulous dress. I mean, honestly, you know, they picked the right color for the Red Cross with the judge, as well as Ann McNally and First Trust Bank. I'm really honored to be here with them, and if they didn't do the things they did, WRC couldn't do the things it did. So I know I speak for everyone associated with the Women's Resource Center in thanking them. And I also want to thank and congratulate the Women's Resource Center. It's really an amazing organization, and what I think is so impressive about it is that it helps women of all levels and all paths. Sometimes for women, the hardest thing is asking for help, but the second hardest thing is knowing where to ask and where to go. And the Resource Center is really a portal for all of that. When you think about the fact that it was started with 5 women putting an ad in a local newspaper, encouraging a meeting on women's issues, and we're now, fast forward 40 years later, 200 volunteers, 4,500 cases, 2,400 women helped every year, some of them friends of mine. I just have to really take my hat off to them. A lot of people think that the things that we do are hard. These women do really good things, and I would love it if you would just join me in applauding them one more time. I also want to say before I get started that I live in fear of having my allergies, which have all of a sudden perked up, put me in a spasm of coughing. So I've told everybody at my tables that if I start to cough, they're to applaud as if I'd said something very important so I can run away, cough, and come back. So it's a small price to pay for the onset of spring, but I want to give you a heads up about it. So when Shelley Patenti first asked me to talk about creating your path to success, I had 2 reactions. The first, I think, is one very typical of women. And I thought, me? Why would anybody want to know what I did or my path to success? I haven't done anything yet. I haven't really been that successful. And I think that's one of the things that women do a lot, is that we don't recognize the things that we've done that maybe we should count as achievements. Second thing I did, because I'm a lawyer, is I started to look at the words very literally. And I thought I wanted to unpack those words and really think about what they meant. So creating, I love that word because it's an action word. Creating connotes action, innovation, taking control. And I really believe that we can do that. There are times when we feel that we don't have a lot of control. Maybe we're in a situation where we think things are conspiring against us, things aren't going our way, things are getting in our way. But we always have the ability to create. There is always somewhere to go. There is always an opportunity presented in every challenge. And it's funny because that really leads to the phrase, your path. You know, we don't say a highway to success. We don't say a speed line to success. We say a path to success. And we know it's a path. In fact, it's many paths. It should probably be called your maze to success, because it's never one little trip, right? You start out this way, and all of a sudden something goes this way. And you didn't really expect it to go that way, but there it went. Something pops up in front of you that's a great opportunity that you didn't know was going to be there, and you have to decide whether to take it. But there's cost someplace else. Or a hurdle comes up in front of you that you really didn't know you were going to have to face, and you have to change things around. And I think the important thing for us all to remember is that success is like life. It's a journey. It's not a destination. We're always traveling on the path to success, and we have a lot of successes along the way. So that leads to, what does success mean? And I think that's the hardest part. One thing we know is that there is no definition of success for women. There was a time many years ago when I think people would say the standard definition of success, and this was usually applied to men, is get a job and do well to support your family. And for women, at least when I was growing up, for people like my mother, it was be a good homemaker. That was success. We don't have that anymore. Success comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. There's no one definition. Is a woman successful when she's a high-paid corporate executive? When she's the head of the Red Cross? When she's driving 3 children around and doing homework and helping people out with school projects, all the while cooking and taking care of her family? When she's mountain climbing? When she's volunteering for organizations? When she's serving our country? All of these things, we all know the answer is yes. And here's the irony. We should be liberated by that. That should be fantastic. We should all think this is great. There is no one thing we have to do. There's no one size that fits all. And yet the truth is that it's more complex. For women, the question of success is more complex. And that's because I think we more often feel that we are defined by other people's definitions of success. We don't actually embrace everything that I just said. And I'm so glad that the judge mentioned our women's veterans and the work that the WRC is doing with the women's veterans. But I think that really exemplifies what I'm talking about. In the last several years since 9/11, I think we're all proud to say that this country has really recognized the importance of our veterans and our troops. I fly a lot, and there are many, many times where I see people in airports and on airplanes thanking veterans for their service. And I think people feel, and rightly so, that people who have given their lives, given their time, made the sacrifices in our military, deserve to be thanked and recognized, and it is a definition of success. Not so much for our women veterans. Why are they forgotten? Because people look at women veterans and they think, how could you decide to go do that and leave your children at home with your parents? Anybody ever hear anybody say that to a male veteran? Nobody ever wonder how a man could go leave his children? Or they think, why would you pick a job like that? It's very aggressive. Why would a woman want to do that? Or is the woman really pulling her own weight? Is she doing the same job that men are? And so here we have these women who by any measure should be regarded as successful, and yet that word isn't often used with respect to them. So here's what I say. We have to take control of defining our own success. Success has to be something that you know it when you feel it. But in order to feel it, you have to be willing to experience it. We have to do what we're not good at, and we have to stop and recognize that success and applaud it and recognize the little successes along the way. And I have 2 anecdotes I want to share. I have a good friend who I've known for 30 years. We met when our sons were a year old. This year has not been a great year for her. She had to close down her business. She's had to sell her house. And I know that she's feeling like a failure. She's in transition, and she's looking for what comes next. But when I see her, I don't see a failure. I see a success, because I see what she did during those 30 years to raise 3 kids largely by herself, to go out and develop a business by herself, and to keep it all together until the last one went to college. Now, I know she's going to be successful again, because she's done it before. But she needs to remember that success, and we need to remember that there are times where life is going to take us in different ways. My older daughter is working in fashion in New York, and in my book, she's a huge success. She's always wanted to be in fashion, she's always wanted to be in PR, and she loves what she does. She's working for a new brand, and so she makes very little money, and she works very long hours. But recently, they had a great event. They won an award. They're now in Bergdorf's. It's a fantastic brand. It's Veronica Beard, if any of you would like to go buy it immediately. Be sure to say Samantha McKeon sent you. And after this big article appeared, one of the founders wrote Samantha this little note and just said, you know, This is so much to do with you. I can't thank you for everything you did. You are the little engine that could. I could just cry when I think about how much we've achieved. And I wrote back to Samantha and I said, cut this out, put this on the wall, save it, read it. This is what success looks like. You are not going to have this every day, but you will have this day forever. You will have that success forever. And I think we all have to do that. We have to look for those successes and appreciate them and enjoy them for the days where we don't have them. So having just said that we can't define success, now my job is to try to tell you how to achieve it, which I've put myself in a bit of a box here. But you know, there's lots of books out there and lots of speeches and lots of YouTubes and lots of TED Talks that will tell you all sorts of things that you can do to be successful. So what I'd like to do is share with you 4 things that I think will increase your chances of success and that I also think will improve your journey along the way. The first one is be yourself. Now, everybody says that. So the question is, what does that mean? Here's what that means to me. You cannot succeed at anything if you are not who you really are. That whole fake it till you make it, that's great advice if what you mean is pretend you're confident until you figure out what you're doing. That's okay. Like, I'm down with that. I got it. I've been there many times. But it doesn't work if what you're saying is pretend you're somebody you're not. You can't do it. You can't hold it up. It will show through. Not only that, why should you? You should embrace who you are. You have something to bring to the party that nobody else brings. And here's the thing about each of the 4 things I want to talk about. You can do these by yourself. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to study anything. You don't have to sacrifice any time. These are just things you have within you, and being yourself is first among them. When I started practicing law, there were very few women in law firms. Doris Brogan, sitting here with me, who started with me, was maybe the only other one I knew. So the common lore at that time, with so few women in the workplace, is that you shouldn't try to stand out. You just wanted to be like the guys, right? Level playing field, don't do anything that's distinctive, don't do anything different. People actually said, there were articles written about this. I promise, go read. Don't have pictures of your children in the office. Don't talk about your family. Wear conservative blue suits. You know, the whole idea was to try to be like a guy, but here was my problem. That didn't work for me. It just wasn't me. So I talked about my kids, and I had them in the office, and I had pictures of them in the office, and in fact, I had their artwork on the wall of my office, and they used to come in on the weekends in the library and make cities under the tables while we were there. And I talked about the fact that I liked to cook. And I allowed who I was to be there. And here's the secret. I think it helped me. Nobody knew what to make of me. I didn't look like anybody else. I wasn't competing with anybody else. They weren't like, well, there's these 5 guys and let's line them up. There was, who's this, right? And I could sort of be myself and bring something to the table that was uniquely me. And I think this is really an important thing for each of us. Now, there are some people in this room, maybe 2 or 3, who have had such confidence during their lives that they don't need this advice. They know that they should be themselves. They know they have something to bring to the party. Those people eat your dessert, right? But here's the thing. Here's the rest of you. Hear this. You have something to say. You have something to contribute. There's a reason why you're at the table. There's a reason why all those studies are showing that companies with women on their boards are more successful companies. Why is that? Because they are getting a diversity of ideas. We have something to say. Speak up. Don't hide. Don't think that you don't have something to say. Shout it out. Good. That's a good thing to applaud for. And I'm really struck, I have to say, by the number of young women I know who are very confident, and their confidence seems to go down as they either enter or advance in the workplace. I also, like Lynn, like the judge, like several other people here, participated in Mentoring Monday, and it was a great experience. But what struck me is the number. It's kind of like speed dating. You know, you sit down and all these people come in and talk to you. And I applaud all those young women for being there looking for mentoring. But I was struck by how many of them asked sort of the same question. how do I make myself successful in a male-dominated world? And I actually had people say, like, I'm not sure whether I should speak up. You know what? Speak up. Be yourself. Everybody else is taken. You gotta be there and do what you can do to demonstrate your value. So being yourself is a critical part of success in my view. And you can do that with no help because you're already an expert at it. Second thing is dedicate yourself to passion and excellence. These two things are inextricably intertwined and they are indispensable to success. It is very difficult to be excellent without being passionate, and it is almost impossible to be successful without being excellent. Now, what does excellent mean? It doesn't mean you have to be the smartest person in the room. It doesn't mean you have to have advanced degrees. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect all the time. What it means is that you have to give 100% all the time in whatever you're doing to being excellent. I don't care what it is, do it the best that you can do it. And here's why it's important. Everybody I know wants people surrounding them who are passionate, excellent, and enthusiastic. Everyone wants those people. When we see it, we want more of it. We want to invest in it. We identify people who bring that passion and that dedication and that hard work and that level of excellence. And we see that it generates enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is infectious, and we want that help. So if you want people to invest in you, you need to do that. Now, Robert Mondavi is quoted as saying something like, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's great, you know? If you're Robert Mondavi, sounds good. Steve Jobs said things like that too, right? Here's the thing. I'm not going to ignore that not everybody here can run a vineyard, right? I get it, that not everyone here has the job that she's longing to have. But here's the thing. You find something about what you're doing that motivates you. You know you better than anybody else. You know what makes you tick. Maybe you don't like your job, but you believe in the company. Maybe you don't like the company, but you believe in the community. Maybe you don't care about the community, but you like the fact that the company is starting, a green initiative and you can't drink those paper coffee cups anymore. Maybe you don't really like any of it, but you really love your coworker who's supporting a disabled child who needs that job. I don't care what it is. You figure out something that motivates you. Here is a secret, and I think it's a secret to success. No one can inspire you but you. You are in control of your own inspiration. You know what makes you tick. Figure out what makes you tick and find a way to apply it to develop that passion so that you want to do well, that you refuse not to do well, and that you bring that energy to everything that you do. People will invest in you. And that brings me to my third point, and that's, for lack of a better phrase, share the love. I have to say that because everybody else says pay it forward. So, I'm trying to think of new ways to connote old ideas. But I really believe in this. I really believe that creating your path to success involves and requires that you recognize that we are not doing this alone, and we don't have to do it alone. It's always dangerous to stereotype because there are women who are not good at things that most women are supposedly good at, and men who are better at things than women are supposedly good at. One of the things that women have a reputation for being good at, and I think a well-deserved one, is building relationships. Now, I know women who are really lousy at relationships, and I know men like my husband who are great at them. But, that's okay. Generally, this is something we do. We remember things about other people. We notice them. We help organize things. We focus on collaboration. What did Judge Hughes say? This award really belongs to my team. I'm not saying no men would say that, but seriously, she gets it, right? We know, right? Women, we know it takes a village, okay? This is a good thing, right? We should embrace that. We should care about making sure that we're connecting with the people around us. It makes our jobs better. It makes our lives better. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, this is very nice, but what does this have to do with success? Well, it has a couple things to do with success. First is kind of the good karma thing. You either believe that or you don't. I believe it. So, what goes around comes around. You're good to other people, you share with other people, you look out for other people. You're going to need that someday, and they're going to look out for you. That's just the way it works. But second, there's a more practical reason for it too, because it has an impact on how people around you view you and your organization. So this is a true story, as Amanda Smith knows. In 2003, we were trying to persuade a lot of lawyers to join us in California. Their firm was falling apart. It was a very difficult time. It was an A-list firm, and dozens of firms were competing. And we were definitely in the worst position because we were Morgan Lewis, and in California, people were like, Morgan Stanley? Who are you? Nobody knew who we were. All these other firms were California firms, so they were competing. So we were having questions and answers with the lawyers one day, and I was talking about how great it is to work for our firm, which it is. And at the end, I asked if there were any questions, and somebody raised their hand and said, do you know when we're going to get the coffee machines back? And I realized that although I was sitting in this conference room with a bunch of people and everything looked normal, because the firm was falling apart, all these vendors were coming in and dismantling the Xerox machines and taking out the coffee machines. One of the women who's now my partner hid a printer under her desk so that she could get the brief out for her client. And I met Amanda Smith, who you were introduced to, when she was working for a pro bono client. And her main concern was, how are we going to get the work done? So this really affected me, all of these people going through this. And the next morning when I came back into the building, I stopped at the Starbucks downstairs and I bought $65 coffee cards. And I left them on everyone's chair with a little note. Now, I promise you, I did not think that that was going to make them join our firm. I was not doing that because I thought I discovered some new great recruiting technique. I really was just trying to be nice. I mean, I felt bad. The next day, they all voted to join us. Now, why am I telling that story? It's not because I did anything fantastic. It's not because that was rocket science. It's not because I spent a whole lot of money and I should be credited for that. I'm telling the story because 10 years later, that's the story that the people who joined us still tell. Why? Because what it told them is that the culture in our firm is that we were going to look at individuals and we were going to care about them as people, not just as lawyers. So there's a reason to do those things, to reach out to other people. You should do it because it's the right thing, but if you want to be successful, you must do it. When they say it's lonely at the top, I'm sure that's true, but I'll tell you what, not too many people get to the top alone, and it is a hell of a hard way to go. You can have people around you and support you, and they will help you. Finally, my last piece of advice is be gritty. So what does be gritty mean? The women who are successful, who you've seen around you, who are the best at what they do, all have grit. Now, I've always thought that passion and perseverance are really important things. And now I'm very excited because I know that, in fact, that's the definition of grit. I was ahead of my time, which I pointed out to all of my children. Remember, I said this before Angela Duckworth said this. So Angela Duckworth is a Penn psychology professor who left a high-paying job to teach for 5 years in San Francisco and Philadelphia and one other city I'm leaving out, New York, Boston, somewhere. And she taught math to 5th graders. And she decided that we all know that talent plus effort is success, but a lot of people were studying talent, so she was going to study effort. And what she studied is grit. And what she says, and I believe this to be true, is grit is more responsible for success. Perseverance and passion are better indicators of success than IQ, than the income that you came from, than the education that you have had to that point. Grit is what makes everything work. Digging in and making it happen. Doing the hard work. Grit means not giving up. Grit means taking advantage of opportunities when they come your way, even though they're scary, because you want to expand your skill set. Grit means working on the thing you're not good at. Usain Bolt spends all his time working on his start. You know why? It's the thing he's not good at, right? There are professional basketball players who talk about the fact that they work each year on the one thing they're not as good at. Figure out what you need to be better at and work on it. And work on it enthusiastically and positively. Dig in. That's what grit is. Grit is sticking it out, it's digging in, it's knowing that your life and your career is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not getting beaten down, it's turning that sharp corner when you need to. So it's always easy to stand up and give advice, but I feel confident in this advice because there are so many great stories of women that really demonstrate how important these 4 things are. Everybody knows about J.K. Rowling, right? Down on her luck, didn't have anything, no money, no nothing. Passion for storytelling has made her one of the most successful women in the world. But I want to talk about somebody else. So raise your hand if you know who Susan Blakely is. Sarah Blakely is. Sarah Blakely. Okay, raise your hand if you know what Spanx are. Okay? We're not going to do the who's wearing them, but I'm just saying. Anybody who didn't raise your hand when I said, do you know what Spanx are, is lying, right? Everybody knows what Spanx is. I think even men know what Spanx is, but I assure you that every woman knows what Spanx is. So here's the Sarah Blakely story. Sarah Blakely was 29 years old, and she was working as a fax operator during the day and a stand-up comedian at night. And she had a pair of cream-colored pants hanging in her closet with the tags on because they didn't fit, right? Okay, how many people have things in their closet with their tags on, right? Determined to wear these pants, she cut the feet off a pair of pantyhose and put them on so that the pants would lay smooth. And voila, Spanx was born, right? But not voila, because she had a great idea and she believed in the idea, but she had no idea what to do with it. So she spent the next several weeks reading books about trademarks, reading about patents. She wrote her own patent. Her mother drew her first product design. And then she researched where she could get somebody to do a prototype. So after weeks of research, she starts driving around North Carolina looking for mills. And guess what? No one. Nobody interested. No one would do it. Not one taker. 2 weeks later, one of the mill owners called back and said he would do it. What changed his mind? He said, I have 2 daughters. They didn't think this was such a crazy idea. Now, I just want to say, I'm here thinking, why didn't I swear I probably did that when I was in high school. I actually really believe, I remember people ripping the seams out of stockings, to make footless tights and things like that. But you know what? It didn't ignite my passion. I didn't do it. She did. So what did she do? She spent $5,000, her total savings, on that prototype. And then she got on a plane, she went to Dallas, and she asked the Neiman Marcus buyer to give her 10 minutes. And 3 weeks later, Spanx hit the stores. And that $250 million business started in her Atlanta apartment. Now, are we all going to be as successful as Sarah Blakely? Would that it were only so, right? But here's the thing that I like about the Sarah Blakely story, apart from the fact that it helps my theme of one size doesn't fit all. What I really like about the Sarah Blakely story is the things that she did are things we all can do. She didn't have a lot of money. She didn't have an education. She didn't have some advantage that none of us have. What she had was passion and grit and a willingness to take an opportunity that came along to her. This wasn't on her path to be a stand-up comedian, but she saw something, she took the opportunity, she did it, she dug in, and she made it work. And so I really feel that if you think about what it took for her to be successful, they're these same things. And I'll leave you with what my husband says to me, sort of 3 little words that I find are motivating and balancing and inspiring. You got this. You already have this. You already know how to be you. You know how to be exquisitely, exceptionally you. You know how to express who you are. You know how to be excellence. You know when you're good. You know how to be good. You know how to give 100%. Whatever you're doing, excellence is within your reach. You can be that person who brings passion and excellence to everything you do. You know how to reach out and make a difference in the world. You know how to embrace other women. You know how to make a way for them. You know how to think about the fact that there's someone in need and to share with them. When your tank is full, you can share, and you can look to others when your tank is running on empty. And you have grit, and we know you have grit. Because if you're in this room because you're one of the women who has been hugely successful, and man, I see so many of them here, and I'm so proud to have known them for so long. If you've already been hugely successful and you're here to give back, we know you have grit because otherwise you wouldn't have been hugely successful. If you're here because you're still trying to figure out your path, then we know you have grit because you're here. You're not sitting somewhere else waiting for something else to happen to you, waiting for something to land out of the sky. You're here meeting other women, listening to other people, working with the Women's Resource Center, finding a way to make your life successful. And so you have all those things. You can be yourself, you can be excellent, you can have the drive to reach out to others, and you can use the grit that you have to succeed. So I hope that as you all go forward on your paths, they'll cross with mine again at some point, and that when they do, each of us will have had some additional successes in our lives that we can celebrate. But in the meantime, whatever you do, just remember, you got this. You all do. Thanks very much.
Excellent. So Jami has agreed to answer a few questions. I know everyone is probably trying to pick her brain and get some great advice. If you'd like, there's a microphone right here at the center of the hall that you could come up and ask one or two questions. And in the meantime, I'll get the ball started because that's what I do for a living. I ask questions. Jami, maybe you could tell us the workplace is a completely different environment now in 2014 than it was when we started 30 plus years ago. In your opinion, what's the biggest change that you've witnessed in workplace environments, and how have women benefited?
So I actually think the biggest change in workplace environments is technology. And I think that it has both benefited and hurt everybody. Technology means there's no downtime. You're reachable all the time. People know where to find you. Your BlackBerry's on. You're expected to respond to things really quickly. So you don't have sort of the break that you used to have. But technology has benefited women because before that, you couldn't run out and go to your son's soccer game. You couldn't go away for the week with your family if something was going on. You couldn't work at home. I mean, when my older kids were little, I used to go home, feed dinner, and go back to the office and sometimes stay overnight. Because if a brief was due the next day, guess what? There was only one place to do it. So I think technology has been a big benefit for women, but it also means that there's more pressure on us to try to balance our lives.
Questions?
Yeah.
You've been an expert when it comes to balancing your home life and your work life, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges that all of us have, regardless of what industry we work in or what career we're pursuing. What advice would you give to people to be able to have it all?
Okay, so first of all, not an expert, right? Usually when people say to me, how do you do it all? I say, sometimes better than others, and that's the truth. I think there are two things you need to have if you're a woman and you're going to try to juggle a career and a family. The first is intestinal fortitude. You have to be okay with the fact that you are not going to feel like you're doing everything perfectly. And you have to be okay with the fact that there will be other people who will feel perfectly free to comment on how you're not doing it perfectly. Whether it's your parents, your in-laws, your friends, your colleagues, other women whose choices are different than yours. It's always very important to me that women recognize that every choice is valid. I have such admiration for women who stay home. I've often said, and I mean it, I had to work full time because I could not be the mother my mother was. My mother was great. She was creative, she was clever, she learned to cook, she learned to sew, we never watched TV, she always did arts and crafts, she never seemed to run out of patience. I'm like done on the first two of those. So when I see women who are choosing to stay at home, I have a lot of admiration for that. And that includes my sisters who do that. When I see women who work outside the home, I think that's an amazing thing to do too. But everybody's going to have an opinion about whether you're striking the balance right. Most people don't express an opinion about how your husband's doing. But a lot of people will have an opinion about you. Well, you know, she wasn't around the other day when her kids were waiting to be picked up, right? So I think you have to have a lot of intestinal fortitude. You have to realize you're not going to be perfect. The second thing is you have to have great childcare. A good marriage is nice. Great childcare is indispensable. You must know, I'm sorry. You must know that your children are okay, and more than okay. You have to be comfortable with that. And one thing I'll say about that, you know, that will show you my commitment to childcare. So we have a wonderful nanny who we met in California. We've been very lucky. We've only had 2 nannies in the 30 years, basically, that we've been having children. And we met this woman in California, and we persuaded her to come back from San Francisco to Philadelphia, which, by the way, you have to be pretty good to persuade somebody to do that. It was tough. But she wants to have a child. She's at an age in her life where she wants to have a child. Hasn't worked out relationship-wise, so she came and talked to us about wanting to do that, and we said, go for it. And last Sunday, we found out that Molly's pregnant with a baby boy who's going to be delivered during the week of my partner's meeting in October, and she's going to be out of pocket for November and December, and you know what? We're all thrilled because we all got to work together on that. So got to have great childcare, got to be flexible, got to have good intestinal fortitude. Those are the things that are most important, I think. Yes?
Hi, Jami. Thank
Hi.
you so much for coming to speak today. I really enjoyed hearing your advice.
Thank you.
I was wondering what you think about the lean in and the band bossy movements that are going around today.
So for those of you who don't know, you know, band bossy is a more recent movement which talks about changing the language really that we use around women. And I actually agree with that. Nobody ever says men are bossy. They say girls are bossy. Very few people describe men as self-promoters, but women are self-promoters. Certainly nobody ever calls men a bitch, at least not in my hearing. And so I think it's a great idea to try to change the language that we're using. Having said that, you know, people have called me a lot of different things. You can't get knocked off your stride because you don't like the words that people are using. You have to know within yourself and be comfortable with what's right. But we certainly shouldn't be using those words about women. And when we hear them used about another woman, we should say something. In terms of the lean in, you know, there's a lot of things in Sheryl Sandberg's book that are controversial. There's some I agree with, some that I don't. Here's the one I do agree with her on probably the most. Women, in my experience, are so committed to trying to do a good job and trying to be really dedicated that they kind of think ahead and they think, okay, well, at some point I might want to have children, and if I have children, then I'm going to have to take a maternity leave. If I take a maternity leave, maybe I won't come back full time. If I don't come back full time, then maybe I won't be so successful. So let's just put me down for 60% and call it a day. Right? They start from, excuse me, the premise that they may not be able to give their all at every point in their career, and so sometimes they check out before their time. What I always say is, I've seen lots of really great, successful women who've done all sorts of things. They've worked full-time with children. They've worked part-time without children. They've dealt with their parents who are aging. They've cared for a child with special needs. Don't assume that you can't do it. Don't check out before your time. And that part of lean in I agree with. Sometimes what you think is only your 80% is better than everybody else's 150. So try to be more fair to yourself and try to be more accurate in assessing what you're bringing to the table. Yep, she's running.
Hi, Jami. My name's Jami as well.
Oh, all right.
A lot of women get down when they experience mistakes or, you know, something doesn't work out well. Can you talk about the importance of learning from mistakes?
I do think, you know, part of my advice was to be excellent at everything you do, and I do think that women try to be perfect, and I think women tend to blame themselves when anything goes wrong. You know, I had somebody say to me once, I don't even drink milk, but when there's no milk in the refrigerator, I feel guilty, right? My husband isn't feeling guilty. The kids drive, they're not feeling guilty. Me, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't buy milk. So I think that women take mistakes on their shoulders in a harder way. But I think this goes along with grit, which is learning from your mistakes. I mean, you have to be willing to take a step back and say, okay, I made a mistake. Doesn't mean I have to quit. Doesn't mean I can't be a surgeon. Doesn't mean I can't be in the job I want to be. Doesn't mean I should give up on expecting a promotion. The world is full of people who make mistakes. And one piece of advice I'll give you is when you make a mistake, ask for help. Like, don't just try to fix it yourself. Don't agonize over it yourself. You know, a shared burden is a burden lightened. And I think you'd be surprised how many women will reach out and help you when you make a mistake. And some of those mistakes can be really big ones. And anybody who hasn't made one in this room, come up and see me at the end, because I want to know who you are. But, you know, I think more than learning from them, which is important, you have to forgive yourself for them and move on. Okay. Up. We got to go. Up. One more? Yes? No? No. I'm sorry. We have to go. Thank you all very much.
And on behalf of the Women's Resource Center, let's thank Jami.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, corporate lawyers always get all these little doodads in their office, and we litigators don't get them, so I'm really excited to have this. Put this right out there. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jami. We had such a wonderful menu of speeches today and great advice from all of the women. Thank you so much, and congratulations to all of the honorees. We certainly appreciate their time and certainly appreciate yours.